If you're unfamiliar, this is Tucker Carlson. Everybody probably knows him. He went on Joe Rogan to have a conversation with Joe about all kinds of crazy stuff. I think they're talking about like the AEPs, aerial phenomena, or UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, basically UFOs that they discovered floating around all over the place.
Government has technology that we're not read in on,
right?
Of course, but so that doesn't answer the question: why have people seen these objects in the skies for thousands of years,
right?
Confirmed, and what are they?
That not confirmed, but okay, let's just assume they're confirmed for a moment. Go on.
And maybe they're from another planet. My only point is there's no evidence of that. There's a huge amount, a massive corpus of evidence that...
Dude, this dude's suddenly talking about evidence, okay?
They're seen by people in our atmosphere, on Earth looking up or in a submarine looking out. And what is that? And by the way, to your point, like, we can't see them coming into our atmosphere because they don't want to be seen. Well, then why do they want to be seen by people on Earth? Like, if
wait, did he say that? Did Joe say? Did anybody say that? I don't remember that being espoused at any point. We can't see them entering our atmosphere because they don't want to be seen. What the hell are you going on about right now?
The technology is that advanced, and clearly it is. Why do they make themselves visible in the first place?
Well, when we study primates, one of the things that we do. Do you ever watch Chimp Nation on Netflix?
I don't have a TV, but
Dude doesn't have a TV. What? Okay.
The sound of it. Yeah.
It's an amazing documentary on Netflix that details these embedded scientists in the Congo. And what's really fascinating about it is that this group of scientists or related scientists have been there for 20 plus years. So these chimps have become entirely accustomed to having human beings near them. So there's very specific rules. You stay within 20 yards of them. If they come closer, you back up. You never have food. Ever. You can't bring any food there because they'll fuck you up and just steal your food. If they find out you have food,
and they're formidable,
you're in real trouble. Oh yeah, they'll tear you apart, and they kill each other. So they'll definitely kill you. And so when they have done this, the chimps have become accustomed to them being there, and the chimps behave completely normally. The chimps see them as just an innocuous part of their environment. They're not food, and they're not enemy. They don't ever intrude. They don't try to challenge them. They don't make eye contact. So they don't worry about the people at all. So they behave completely like chimps. And if I was an advanced species and I was studying people and I wanted the human beings to eventually kind of catch up, right? Like, you're introducing technology that they call donations, crashed vehicles. Figure out what fiber optics are. Here you go. Check this out. Figure this out. Try to figure that out. Maybe it'll take you decades. Maybe it'll take...
Okay, interesting point. I think what Joe is saying here is, like the chimps and the humans, if you wanted to be unobtrusive and just see how things, just kind of study an animal species or whatever, you would blend in or just be part of the environment or just not show yourself at all. And you might toss them something every now and then. You might throw them, like a piece of fiber optic cable or something. I mean, we have records of all of our scientific advancements up to this point. There isn't an example of a scientific advancement that is inexplicable or that came from whatever, from aliens or just nowhere, that came from nowhere, that we just don't know where it came from. We can trace all of this stuff back. We can trace it all the way back to the guy who was studying, the shape of atoms. We can trace it back to looking at the shape of, like, the molecular structure by shooting X-rays at ice cubes and stuff. We can trace it all the way back. There's nothing, like, mysterious about how we arrived at our conclusions.
Take you more. But you are accelerating the technological evolution of this advanced species on this planet. And one way to do that would be
For what purpose, I wonder?
Well,
Why not? I mean, I don't buy this at all. I think this is completely made up for human beings. I can see it feasibly and plausibly happening, but I don't believe that's happening at all. I have no reason to think that's taking place. But, I mean, why not?
well, that's a very good question. My belief is that biological intelligent life is essentially a caterpillar, and it's a caterpillar that's making a cocoon, and it doesn't even know why it's doing it. It's just doing it, and that cocoon is going to give birth to artificial life, digital life. It's going to
Okay, I'm lost. I don't even know what he's talking about now.
give birth to a new life form, and I think we're real close to that.
From Super Nerd, the guy who died by tickling the dragon's tail did so by not following safety protocols, but his action after he knew he was walking corpse was admirable. He knew he was dead, so he made sure people can study it to understand radiation better. I don't remember exactly what happened. I did a whole bunch of reading on this exact subject, but I don't remember what he did or how it played out or whatever. But I think he got like a massive dose of radiation, right? And knew that he was going to die from that moment forward. Did he record his results? Is that what happened?
I think we're way closer than that to that than most people would ever want to admit.
I agree.
And I think
But can we assign a value to that? Is that good or bad?
that's a good question. It depends. Universally,
Like, they're talking about artificial intelligence now. Is that good or bad? I don't know why Tucker would even ask that question. Like, what are you talking about? Is AI good or bad? Technological advancements are good, in my opinion. By their nature, they're good.
I think it's the path. I think it's what happens. I think what this thing is, if you extrapolate, if you take the concept of a sentient artificial intelligence that has the ability to utilize all the information that every human being has on Earth at a level of computing that's far beyond the capabilities of the human mind and all of our supercomputers that currently exist, because it'll design much better computers. It'll use quantum computers. It'll have the ability to recode things and change things. It'll make better versions of itself. So instead of biological evolution, which is very slow, it takes a long time, relatively. It takes
Oh, God, here's the evolution stuff.
it's pretty quick, really, when you think about it. Like how long? It's not that long to go from being a single-celled organism to being a human being flying a plane. Really, relatively, over the course of a billion years, if you think about how long the universe has been around.
About 2.5 billion. That's how long it took. 2.5 billion years. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Took 1 billion years for an amoeba, or for the first life to appear, I believe. It took 1 billion years. And then it took 2.5 billion years from there to kind of turn into something else, into like creatures that could feasibly turn into humans one day. And then eventually, as time went on, things morphed and changed, and the mammalian species, or the mammalian genus, or I don't know what it would be, it came into existence, and it survived the climate disaster that happened that killed off the dinosaurs, by and large.
But it's slow compared to technological evolution. I mean, 100 years ago, we didn't have shit. And now we could send videos from your phone and it'll hit New Zealand in a second.
Sure.
It's crazy. The stuff that we have now is beyond imagination. It's
Absolutely. We live in the future. You ever wonder what the future looked like, or whatever, what it would look like? We're in it. This is it. This is the future right here. Streaming video to 300 people's homes simultaneously. Honestly, my videos are going out to millions of people's homes every month. I get millions of views every month across my channels. And that is a truly incredible technological advancement. The phone, the cell phone, is a truly incredible technological advancement.
Essentially magic for people 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
If that keeps going, it's ultimately going to lead to a life form. And if that life form has now
I don't know where he's getting that. It's going to lead to a life form. Not necessarily, but okay.
Ultimately going to lead to a life form. And if that life form has now untethered, it doesn't have any problems with biological evolution. Now it's just about information and implementing the technology that's available and then increasing that technology and making it better and better. It essentially becomes a god.
Okay. I feel like he needs to stop smoking weed before he gets into these conversations, first of all. And second, Tucker needs to back up off the microphone and stop breathing into it because it's driving me insane.
Because if you give it enough time, it has the ability to make better versions of itself, which will in turn make better versions of itself. It has the ability to utilize everything. It has the understanding of everything that exists in the universe. It's black holes, dark matter, everything. And it probably has the ability to harness that or even reproduce that. So if you take artificial sentient intelligence and it has this super accelerated path of technological evolution, and you give artificial general intelligence, sentient artificial intelligence far beyond human beings, you give it 1,000 years alone to make better and better versions of itself, where does that go? That goes to a god.
I mean, hell, where do humans go from here in 1,000 years? What we will be in 1,000 years, we will be like gods to what we are now. Just like we are like gods now to what we were 10,000, 100,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, would we be like gods then? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we have cell phones, we have the internet, we have all kinds of crazy stuff today, for sure.
It literally can create universes.
But what kind of...
By the way, what you said about magic, 100% true. Whenever we discover something new, first thought, how can I use it to kill someone? Absolutely. If magic were real and verifiable and repeatable and existed, the military would have weaponized it already, a long time ago.
Where does that go? That goes to a god. It literally can create universes.
But what kind of god? So, like, I think of it this way. So the first stage of the Industrial Revolution consisted of people building machines that were stronger than the human body.
Right.
Right? So the steam-powered loom.
Sure.
The backhoe.
Combustion engine.
Combustion engine. They replace muscles.
Right.
Right. So that's what the machine does. It becomes stronger than the human body. The second stage, which we're in the middle of, consists of creating machines that are more powerful than the human mind. That's what computing is. And I would say AI or supercomputing is just that exponentially.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it a god in the sense that the machine, however powerful it is, any more than a backhoe is a god because it can dig a trench faster than 100 men, it is still something that people created. So this...
Okay, sure. People may have created it, but hypothetically speaking, let's just say that one day we will reach a point where artificial intelligence becomes real intelligence, where it becomes alive and awake and aware and asks questions. What happens then? I mean, Tucker's whole premise seems to be based on the idea that artificial intelligence will never be, quote unquote, intelligent. Never. I simply don't accept that.
Story hasn't really changed. At the center of the story are people, and their creative power may lead to unintended consequences, but the machines that they build did not make the universe and did not make people. People made the machines.
Right.
So but I would say the part I agree with is there's a spiritual component here for sure,
Did Joe say that? I don't remember hearing Joe Rogan say that there's a spiritual component to it. I remember Tucker saying that. Did he just say the part I agree with is the part that I said? Okay.
People will worship AI as a god. AI, Ted Kaczynski
Okay.
was likely right, will get away from us. We will be controlled by the thing that we made. All those are bad. Like
Ted Kaczynski, famously the Unabomber, if you didn't know who he was, back in the 70s, he was an eco-terrorist who was bombing places. And it turned out he was like a math professor at a university or something, extremely intelligent. Dude just died not too long ago in ADX Florence Supermax. Inhumane, horrific place. Cruel and unusual punishment. Shouldn't exist in my opinion, but that's where Ted Kaczynski died. Anyway, yeah, he said a lot of stuff that was like anti-technology, that was pro-ecology, like not climate change. I don't know if he's talking about climate change at the time, but he said a lot of stuff that was like pro-ecosystem or whatever. He thought that we should stop hurting the planet.
that's just bad, and we need to say unequivocally it's bad. It's bad to be controlled by machines.
Right.
Machines are helpmates. Like we created them to help us, to make our lives better, not to take orders from them.
Did anybody say anything about taking orders from machines? What?
So I don't know why we're not having any of these conversations right now. We're just acting as if this is like some kind of virus, like COVID, that just spreads across the world inexorably. There's nothing we can do about it. Just wait to get it.
Well, that's the case. Yeah, there's nothing we can do. AI is going to spread. That's just what it is. You know, people got upset that I used, or that I was willing to use AI art in my, to create my book cover or whatever. Or to create my book, period. And the reason that they were unhappy about that is because they don't want AI to replace human artists. Now, I get that. I get that sentiment, that feeling. I get that fear that it's going to replace human artists. But here's the thing. That's going to happen no matter what. Okay, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. AI art exists. It exists. It's here to stay forever. And we have to get used to that fact. We have to find a way to work with it or work around it or whatever. There's no other option here. Now, I recommend using AI as a tool. As an artist, you want to harness artificial intelligence as a tool to your benefit, basically. That's my opinion on it. Eventually, I ended up making the cover for my books. They're my covers. I own them. They're pictures that I got from stock photo websites. Except I did get one of the assets, or maybe two of the assets, like two of the images, from somebody who won a contest. I held a contest for people to like help me figure out what to do. But people often forget I'm an artist too. I have been an artist like forever. That's how I got my start on YouTube, was through art. I was drawing stuff on screen. So it's not like I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to get free work. I was trying to get inspiration. I was trying to get ideas from people. And I got it. You know, I got a whole bunch of ideas. And the ideas that I liked and that I paid for but didn't use, they went in the book as a tribute to the people who created it. Plus they were paid for it. So, anyway, the point that I'm so laboriously getting to is AI is here to stay, and that's just what it is. Tucker is making it out like we can stop this and we should try to stop it, but no, we can't stop it. AI is here to stay.
It's like, no. if we agree that the outcome is bad, and specifically it's bad for people,
but we don't agree on that completely. I mean, AI, set art aside, AI has been immeasurably valuable to humanity. I mean, it's given us the ability to run calculations and find answers to questions that we never would have been able to before.
we should care what's good for people. That's all we should care about. Is it good for people or not? If it's bad for people, then we should strangle it in its crib right now.
Right.
And why just blow up the data centers? Like, why is that hard? If it's actually...
Dude, are you kidding? You want to... This dude's literally saying he wants to blow up data centers to prevent artificial intelligence from taking root. What?
Going to become what you just described, which is a threat to people, humanity, life, then we have a moral obligation to murder it immediately. And since
that would be the case if we could agree that AI is necessarily dangerous and bad and evil and wrong and is going to lead to people's deaths. Nobody has any reason to believe that.
since it's not alive, we don't need to feel bad about that.
Well, you could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you...
People on the right. I love it that he had to admit it. He said, I'll just admit it. Yeah, okay, I'm on the right. People love to pretend they're not on the right. I don't know why. Anyway, yeah, that is pretty disgusting, defending dropping nukes on civilians. That's not good. Although in Japan's case, we shouldn't have dropped the nukes on Japan. I think that Japan had already, they were already pretty close to surrender in the first place. May have been a bad idea to drop nukes on them. That may have been morally wrong, deeply, deeply wrong.
Are you joking?
right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. No, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil.
Well, it's a bad thing to kill innocent civilians, men, women, children, whoever. It's bad to hurt them in any way, shape, or form. And guess who's doing that right now? I mean, not using nuclear weapons necessarily right now, but Putin is killing civilians right now in Ukraine needlessly. And Israel is killing civilians needlessly. Children, babies, for no reason. So, yeah, I love how Tucker's double-sided, take is, I hate that people are defending killing civilians with nuclear weapons, but I love defending Russia and Israel. That's just fascinating.
It's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to
Yes, agreed. We should get rid of nukes completely.
justify, oh, no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no?
No, get rid of all nukes.
How about, spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening? Would you kill baby Hitler, famously?
Right.
So I don't know why we're sitting back and allowing this to happen if we really believe it will extinguish the human race or enslave the human race.
Okay, well, I don't think anybody believes that or fears that except for you, Tucker. No one thinks that AI is going to enslave the human race. Why don't you, come back to reality with everybody else for a minute there, please?
How can that be good?
Well, if God creates everything, if God created the universe and God creates people, God probably creates a process. And we think that we are very important because we are very important to us. But are we very important in a universal sense? Not really. Like, if the Earth just imploded and disappeared, if the sun went supernova and our whole solar system was blown to bits, the universe still exists.
It depends
and
how
God
wide
created...
for sure. In the end, as Conan O'Brien, the famous philosopher, once said, every grave goes unvisited, which is true, and that's an important perspective. Pull out the lens a little bit. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't.
But it does matter.
Do your
It does
kids?
matter
How
to
about
us.
this? Do your children matter?
Yes, sure.
Do their lives matter?
For
Would you
us,
die for them?
yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Everything matters. If you're not comfortable,
Exactly.
it matters. If you're sitting here like you don't want to wear headphones, like let's not wear headphones. That matters.
Yeah, I don't like wearing headphones. I don't wear headphones. I mean, I wear like little earbuds or whatever you call them, but not gigantic headphones. I think that's like kind of a tacky, weird look.
Everything matters. I mean, at scale.
But what matters most, like,
Right? That is the evil, right? The evil is it's the same thing as saying the necessary evil of dropping nuclear bombs on civilians is if you don't do that, then there'll be more evil. Then more things will happen. It's kind of the same thing. Like it doesn't.
it comes from the same place, which is hubris. Like imagining you're God, you have unlimited power, and you have omniscience. You can imagine what the future is going to be.
No, that's not what's happening. That's not what anybody is saying. It's completely fabricated and it's nonsense. What the hell are you talking about?
You can't. You're a fucking idiot. You're a person. Like, you can't
Right.
even make your wife happy.
Right.
Like, the limits of your power are really obvious. The limits of your wisdom, same. So, like, don't jump into shit, big things, whose outcomes you can't predict with certainty. Like, you can't know. Go in with humility. I guess that's what I'm saying. Right? So,
Yeah.
and do what you can, knowing that you're probably going to screw it up. And you probably won't achieve your goal, but like you should try. And on the AI question, everyone I've ever talked to about, I'm hardly an expert. I don't own a computer, okay? But
How does this guy not own a TV or a computer? That's crazy. How is he looking up all these conspiracy theories that he's buying into?
everybody I've ever talked to, and there's many people, are like, yeah, it's could get away from us and enslave us. Well, let's say no to slavery. How's that? Is that a tough one?
Well, let's stop talking to conspiracy theorists who think that AI is going to enslave us. How about that? Is that a tough thing to do? You ever consider that one? What brought him to the conclusion that AI was going to enslave humanity? What the hell is he talking about right now? Where did he get any of this? Without a TV or a computer? Is he sitting there on his phone, sitting on the toilet like Donald Trump, reading through his classified documents in his bathroom until his legs go numb, like it's a fucking shampoo bottle, just sitting there scrolling through 4chan, reading these conspiracy theories or something? What's going on?
One, not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe a good use of nuclear weapons would be to hit the data centers. No, I'm serious.
He's not joking. He's serious.
Like, why is that crazy?
It's not.
Yes, it is, Joe. Yes, it is crazy. Tucker Carlson is advocating for using nuclear weapons to destroy the internet. And you're saying that's not crazy? What?
It's not if you think that human beings are the end of this evolutionary chain.
Well, what else is? Some supercomputer in a data center outside Dulles Airport? No. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't actually think that individuals, I don't think I'm that important. My life is that important. I don't. I will die. I know that. And I try to keep that in mind every day.
But you're important to everybody that cares about you. You're important to the people
But
around
if we don't
you.
think,
Like, I feel like they already said that. Did they not? Did I rewind or something?
if we don't think people are important, then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if there is this
Is it real?
So I guess Tucker is about to question if evolution is real.
I think people are important, then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if there
That was a factual state. Evolution is real. It wasn't a question. It sounded like a question for a second, but Joe was stating evolution is real.
is this
Is it real?
constant, I don't know, but it's visible. Like you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence.
Yeah, that's evolution. It is so hard to not be that guy who makes fun of people. It is so hard not to be him. Who, like, calls people idiots and stuff. I don't want to be him, so I'm not going to. But my God, dude, it's a struggle every day. Something that I fight every day. It's a lifelong battle.
Evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution as articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true. Right?
No, it is actually accurate. As articulated by Darwin, I mean, why are we talking about Darwin in the first place? I'm lost. I don't know what Darwin has to do with this, like, equation, why we're thinking about him or whatever. That doesn't really make any sense. Darwin is completely irrelevant to this whole process. He's not like a god to people who accept evolution as the fact that it is. He's just a dude that noticed something and wrote about it. That's it. Was he right about everything? No. And we've discovered that he was wrong about some things. And we corrected those things. In science, a theory is an overarching framework from which we can derive laws. The law of gravity is derived from the theory of relativity. Theory is the highest rank something can hold in science, because we have proven it beyond a shadow of a doubt. We had falsifiable qualities, and it passed those falsifiable tests. And, for example, relativity, general relativity, it's been proven over and over and over again. And as a matter of fact, it was proven again with this most recent eclipse in 2024. Scientists used the eclipse as an opportunity to look at light bending around the sun, thus proving once again general relativity. The theory of evolution, just like the theory of relativity, is as solid as it gets and has been proven 1,000 times over. It will never go away. General relativity will never go away. Evolution will never go away. It might be tweaked from time to time, might be changed here or there a little bit, maybe. But what we have is as solid as it comes.
In what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not.
There is. There is a fossil. You can't just say there isn't when there is. What are you talking about? There's no fossil record. What?
Single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not. And
there's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's
and they
tons
develop...
of record of adaptation, and you see it in...
That's what evolution is, adaptation, Tucker. My God. There are 3 pillars to evolution, okay? I've said this before. I'm going to keep it short. Pillar number 1, gene duplication. Pillar number 2, gene mutation. Pillar number 3, selection. Notice I didn't say natural selection, because there are a bunch of different types of selection. When you're born, you have gene duplications, like you have multiple genes for your eyes to set your eye color or whatever. Unnecessary ones. Sometimes they mutate. Sometimes you only have one gene for blue eyes, and it mutates, and it causes big problems. Sometimes it causes problems that are so bad that, like, oh my God, you're suddenly blind now because of this mutation. And if that's the case, that creature historically has not survived as easily or as well as others who have, certain mutations, like the green eye gene. Historically, people who have bad mutations don't survive as well. People who have good mutations survive better than others. So gene duplication turns into gene mutation, which is assisted by selection, the selection process, natural selection. You know, human beings select for the most beautiful apple or the most tasty dragon fruit or the prettiest person that they can get or whatever. We select for those things. That's sexual selection and natural selection. And there are other kinds of selection. Sexual, natural selection, artificial selection. There are a billion different types. Those are the pillars of evolution.
Your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the
Sure.
through litter to litter.
That's what evolution is. Adaptation, litter to litter. And as over the course of like millions of years, those adaptations add up to something new.
But no, there's no evidence at all zero, that, people, evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all.
Yes, there is. We do have chains for this stuff. I mean, we don't. He seems like he's setting an impossible goal to reach. Like, we can't prove that, or we can't show a record from amoeba to human being because that chain is literally 2.5 billion years long. And there's always a spot in there where you can point to and say, look, there's a missing link in this chain right here. There will always be a spot like that. One species always gives birth to the same exact species. That's how it works. It's just very slow, gradual changes. That's all. And this guy, you can't tell me he doesn't understand. Tucker Carlson, you cannot convince me he doesn't know. He knows.
And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution because the theory of adaptation is clearly, obviously true.
There is no theory of adaptation to my knowledge. Is there? I've never heard of this. Theory of adaptation. I mean, it was a book. Adaptation doesn't appear to be a theory. It appears to be a component of the theory of evolution. Yeah, adaptation isn't a theory. It's just a component of a theory, to my knowledge.
But Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory, almost.
Oh, my God. Theories are the pinnacle of scientific progress. It doesn't get higher up than a theory. We derive laws from theories. When people say it's just a theory, what they mean to say is it's just a hypothesis, just something I'm throwing out there, something I'm thinking about. My psychology professor said it's just a theory to me once, and it pissed me off so much to hear a professor say that shit. Really? Oh my God, dude.
200 years later, no, we have not found that at all.
Yes, we have.
And I can't even guess. I mean, I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are
You mean hypotheses?
your theories?
God created people, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Okay, well, here's how it works. Let me tell you how it works, okay? You have a set of facts, and you build an explanation of how this stuff worked based on those facts. And you build a bunch of them. You build a bunch of ideas of what maybe happened here. Those are all called hypotheses. And you create falsifiable things about them. And as you falsify them, as you prove them wrong, as you try to prove them wrong, you cross it out on the list. You cross them all out. And when you're left with, one or two hypotheses, you really vet those things as hard as you can. And you build it up into a framework. You'll end up with like one hypothesis, build it into a framework, and try to predict things using the hypothesis that you've created, the fully fledged framework that you've created. Try to predict stuff. For example, the theory of evolution has the predictive quality of being able to tell exactly where certain fossils of certain types of creatures are. The theory of evolution was used to predict the location of Tiktaalik, which is the transitional form between sea creatures and land dwellers. And evolution theorized that the fossil of Tiktaalik could be found in Canada. And sure enough, it was, in one specific swamp. Evolution has predictive quality to it. Does he really believe that, like, evolution is fake, or is he just saying all of this for the sake of his audience, believing that he's a religious nutcase? Is he really this stupid? With Ben Shapiro, for example, I'm not convinced he is. I'm not so sure with Tucker. I don't know. It's so hard to tell for sure, you know?
Right, but
It's not a new idea.
they didn't have computers. They didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yeah? Are you kidding? Do we understand more now? Is that a real question? Of course we understand more now.
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand?
Dude, I love that Joe is just like laying it out. Yes, we know more.
Of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more
We
today?
understand way less. We understand so little that we're actually sitting here allowing like a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to like.
Wait, how do you know that these software engineers are childless, first of all? And why do you say that the ones that are working on AI are from Northern California specifically? Why do you think it's that they're from there? And third, having a lack of wisdom is not the same as having a lack of intelligence. So I am honestly like completely lost. I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
Like flirt with the extinction of mankind. So no, previous generations would be like, what? No, stop. And we're not doing that because
but
we
they
know...
wouldn't have done that even with the nuclear bomb. I mean, obviously the Manhattan Project was done in secrecy, but they
That's such a good point.
wouldn't have stopped it because the imperative of getting this weapon before Hitler got the weapon was what it
Well,
was
Hitler
on
was kind
everyone's
of
mind.
done by then. The Russians had pretty much extinguished any hope that...
Well, okay. Hitler was aware that it was possible to create a nuclear bomb, just as the United States was aware of it. And the Manhattan Project was the project, the secret code name for the project that was being done to create the nuclear weapon before Hitler. We wanted to do it before Hitler. Because if Hitler got a nuclear weapon before us, then we'd be in some real shit, right? But by the time we finally developed the nuclear weapon, or were ready to use it at the very least, I think we developed it before then, but by the time we were ready to use it, the war was over between Hitler and the rest of the world. The United States allied with the USSR, with Stalin, because Hitler intended to go into the USSR, invade Russia, and take it over. And Stalin was a terrible tactician. His solution to everything was throw more bodies at it, which led to like, what was it, 63 million people from the USSR troops dying? Okay, 24 million civilian and military deaths in the Soviet Union. 418,000 in the United States, 450,000 in the UK. Yugoslavia had 1 million civilian and military deaths total. Military deaths, Soviet Union had about 10 million. The United States had 417,000 military deaths. Now, I understand that there's a border like between where Germany was and where the USSR was at the time, and Germany could just send troops over. It wasn't as easy to make it to the United States. I get that. Okay, I get it. But Stalin's whole tactic for everything was just throw bodies at it until it works. And it did not work out, like, at all. So, anyway, we had to team up with Stalin, and we did a pincer attack, I believe is what it's called, on Germany, or on the Axis. We did a pincer attack where the USSR, or Stalin's men, invaded from the east, and the United States invaded from the west. The US, the UK, everybody all went in at the same time and did what we could to take people out to the best of our ability. So we do the pincer attack, and Hitler's in a bunker, and he's with his wife. He didn't want to marry her because he knew that if he did, he would look less desirable to others. So it was just his mistress. But they got married on his last day on Earth, both their last days on Earth. And I believe they took cyanide pills together. They committed suicide together either way. Right before the bunker was breached, and, we found Hitler's body and all that stuff. The USSR controlled the East. The United States controlled the West. And the USSR was objectively a worse place to be, like the USSR side. I mean, the East Germany was objectively a worse place to be for everybody, for women particularly. There are accounts of women, like, describing what it was like to be in the USSR at the time. They said, your best bet was to find a USSR soldier and, date him, because they will be less likely to just like to rape you, basically. I don't know how else to say it. They'll be less likely to do that as an army if one of them claims you. So the women were taking, like, boyfriends in the USSR army. It was bad. Anyway, they still had to deal with Japan, imperialist Japan. Japan was allied with Germany in World War II, and they were horrifically brutal. It was ugly. It was bad. It was so bad, in fact, Japan was, that Hitler got complaints about how bad Japan was. I mean, really brutal stuff. Hitler received complaints about how brutal Japan was. So after Hitler was defeated, General MacArthur, as Trump likes to say, General MacArthur was tasked with taking Japan. And there was a firebombing. We sent a whole bunch of planes through, Japan, and attacked the entire area, firebombed it, dropped a whole bunch of bombs on it, and tried to force them to surrender. And as a matter of fact, I think more people died from the firebombing than died from the actual nuclear weapons. But the firebombing didn't do the trick. It didn't get them to surrender. But finally, dropping the bombs did get Japan, imperialist Japan, to surrender to the United States. And they said, when they dropped the bombs, they said, for the first time in history, the enemy has used cruel bombs, I think it was called, or something like that. Because the bombs aren't just intended to kill the people there. They're intended to kill men, women, and children, people who are just civilians. And they're intended to create a radioactive zone where people for generations will get cancer while they live there. You can't live in the area and survive long without getting some kind of a deformation or something. It's a cruel bomb. It's bad. Atomic weapons shouldn't exist. If I were the president, I would get rid of all of my nuclear weapons. I would disarm all of them, and I would put them down in a field, and I would show all of the other countries around, look, we got rid of our nuclear weapons, and I'm asking you to do the same. No more nuclear weapons. Obviously, we can do research into nuclear weaponry, or not nuclear, but like nuclear research for energy purposes and things, but no more nuclear weapons. Deeply ugly nuclear weapons are. MacArthur finally took Japan and agreed to allow them to continue to control their own government. And that was a sign of respect that the Emperor of Japan really appreciated. And that led to Japan, like, you know, cooperating fully with the United States, basically. Before dropping the nukes, the United States dropped leaflets on Nagasaki and on Hiroshima, and the little leaflets basically said something to the effect of, your government is bringing you to your demise, you need to do something about it immediately, or, you know, this is going to happen, so on and so forth. And people were like confused by it, but didn't think much of it. They just kind of like moved on. And then the bombs fell. The disturbing thing about this whole story is that Israel dropped leaflets on the Palestinians the same way not too long ago. The exact same way. Your government's bringing you to destruction. You need to move to the south if you want to be safe or whatever. Same exact method. It's really, really scary stuff what's happening right now. Anyway, sorry for that little deviation. It was so bad that an actual Nazi was widely regarded as a hero in Nanjing simply by using his badge to stop Japanese soldiers to do atrocities to the civilians. Yeah. I don't even want to talk about, what I mean is, I don't even want to say it on YouTube, what Japanese people were doing to Chinese. Chinese were on the Allies' side, but they had a very small army. It was only about 40,000 strong. To America's 16 million. Yeah. The United States had 16 million soldiers to China's 40,000. It was a very small army, but they were on the Allies' side, and they worked with the Allies and tried to help any way they could. And Japan was really, really aggressive and violent and did horrific, vile shit to the Chinese in World War II. Like, real horrific shit. And there is a pretty clear bigotry today against the Japanese on the part of Chinese people here in New York City to this day. I know a lot of Chinese kids who have a big problem with Japanese people because of that, you know, that old history that they have. Anyway, got off track a little bit there. Let's keep listening to Joe now that I've kind of laid out a little bit of a history there. Listen to Joe talk to Tucker about the bombs. I mean, Joe was not incorrect in what he said, as far as I can remember. But Tucker decided to try to correct him on it anyway.
I mean, obviously the Manhattan Project was done in secrecy, but they wouldn't have stopped it because the imperative of getting this weapon before Hitler got the weapon.
That's correct. That was like the rush, yes.
Was what it was
Hitler
on
was kind of
everyone's
done
mind.
by then.
By the time the Manhattan Project was taking place? No, he wasn't. The Manhattan Project started August 13th, 1942, and I think that the beaches of Normandy were stormed on June 13th, 1944. So Hitler had basically just opened the death camps publicly, pretty much, by the time the Manhattan Project had started. So, no, you're just wrong, Tucker.
The Russians had pretty much extinguished any hope that that would continue. But
the Russians were terrible. in World War II. Their military leadership was dumb as dog shit. It ran like garbage, and it runs like garbage today, too. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because Stalin, as a dictator, insisted on controlling everything. You know how Stalin died? He had a cerebral hemorrhage. And all of his generals were there in the room, and nobody wanted to move or do anything because he didn't order them to. And if he didn't order them to, then they shouldn't move. They shouldn't do shit. Should just stand there. I mean, that was the excuse that they gave, obviously. Maybe they didn't feel that way, really. But the point is that Stalin controlled everything from the top down. Dictators tend to do that. Control everything from the top down. The U.S. military is broken into small pieces, and each individual piece can make decisions for the group under them. That's what makes the U.S. so strong, is the fact that we can break it into little pieces like that, and each individual piece has the ability to command itself, basically. The dictatorships are very top-down and insist on controlling everything. And sure, yes, they all have their own little commanders and all that stuff, just like the U.S., but everyone is afraid of stepping out of line or doing something that the dictator wouldn't like or whatever. They're all afraid. They live off of fear in dictatorships. And that's why it doesn't really work very well. In fact, it works like dog shit. That's why Stalin was such a terrible military strategist. Not just because he's just straight up bad at strategizing. I mean, there was that. But because he wouldn't let anybody else strategize with him. He wouldn't let anybody help him with stuff. And he was just terrible. So, anyway, give you a little bit of context on how it works. Kind of interesting.
And the Russians had pretty much extinguished any hope that that would continue. But
dude, Tucker is obsessed with Russia and how great Russia is. I don't know what it is. I don't know why he's like this or what. It's weird.
Had pretty much extinguished any hope that that would continue. But
we were, in the
middle of the logic of war.
The commencement of the Manhattan Project.
For sure. But the logic was the same, and it was, 4 years of got to beat the other guy, got it. And I don't mean to sound too judgmental about the bomb. I know why they built it, okay? But you just wonder why nobody in the middle of that thought, is this really a good? And some of them did think it. Actually.
I'm sure they did.
Yes, they did.
Oppenheimer himself.
Of course. Large organizations don't respond to the moral qualms of individuals very well. So that was, whatever, it's well known what happened. But no, we should pause and ask, is the machine we're building worth having? And nobody seems to do that. And there are all kinds of economic forces, which nobody ever mentions, that drive that heedlessness, that stupidity. Like,
dude, what is he even talking about right now? No one ever thinks, should we do this thing? I mean, that's capitalism. Are you criticizing capitalism right now? Money dictates what things are invested in or what interests people go down. Money and public interest dictate what we research and what we build and things like that. If it can make money for people, then it will be built. I'm just kind of blown away that Tucker is... He seems to be criticizing capitalism here. I agree, that's not a good thing that it works that way. But is Tucker turning into a communist?
California, for example, is completely, the state both of us have lived in, is collapsing. Yeah. And they're betting everything on AI. For the tax base is going to be dependent on this technology working.
Is that really what they're betting on?
Of course.
Okay, this is just complete bullshit, seems to me.
AI is...
Did you see the most recent thing about the amount of billions of dollars they spent on the homeless problem with no trackable results?
Well, they've had massive results. They've increased the homeless population dramatically. If you pay for something, you get more of it. And that would include...
Okay, that's such a stupid joke. But aside from all of that, I don't believe any of that. This is politicized, and Joe Rogan is really bad on politicized issues. California Homeless money, billions. California spent over $20 billion over the past 5 years dedicated to the state's homelessness crisis, including funneling money towards supporting shelters and subsidizing rent. Still, homelessness grew 6% in 2023 from the year prior to more than 180,000 people, according to federal point-in-time data. Interesting. So California is spending billions on the homelessness crisis, and it's increasing. It doesn't mean that the money that they spent isn't useful or being put toward the right things. That's not what that means. It seems to me that what that means is they need to put more money into fixing the problem. New York City has something, it's a law or a regulation or whatever, and the regulation is basically you are guaranteed a bed no matter what. You're guaranteed to be given a bed in New York City. And that's actually like dealt with the homelessness problem dramatically. I don't think I've seen anybody that's out there like homeless willingly. And I walk up and down the streets all the time. I've seen people who are sitting there asking for money, but at night they aren't sleeping on the streets. They aren't sleeping on the side of the road or any of that stuff. So I don't know. Like maybe they can do something like that. Just tossing it out there.
Include fentanyl addicts. Oh, absolutely. It's been a wild
Sorry, step back.
Results.
Well, they've had massive results. They've increased the homeless population dramatically. If you pay for something, you get more of it. And that would include fentanyl addicts. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they're not paying for fentanyl. They're paying for, people to try to stop fentanyl from coming in. They're not paying for more homeless people. They're paying for more beds that people can sleep in and stuff. I know it's just a joke, but it's also a propagandistic joke, and it needs to be pointed out.
It's been a wild success. I actually talked to Gavin Newsom the other day.
Did you really?
Yeah. And
what's that like? Does he smell like sulfur?
It was by phone. I was talking to him on the phone. It's such a
Gavin Newsom is actually pretty legit. I like him. I think he's pretty cool. I would love to see him run for president. Do you know that Gavin Newsom has been fighting for gay rights since time immemorial? Since the very beginning, since before gay rights were even on the table in the Overton window. Gavin Newsom went on Larry King Live to debate gay rights in 2004 against John MacArthur, an extremist nutcase. I talk about John MacArthur like nowadays. Back then, at the time, gay marriage was, George Bush was trying to pass a bill that would criminalize, he's trying to pass an amendment, a constitutional amendment that would ban gay marriage. That's what Bush is trying to do. Gay marriage was not something that people did or talked about or whatever back then. And Gavin Newsom comes on here and he debates the guy on this subject when it was unpopular, 2004.
Well, of course, not all couples are going to have children, but only couples that are male and female are going to have children. And the only way you procreate the race is between a man and a woman. So built into the fabric of human society is, of course, the male, female, and the producing of a child.
What a bizarre... Okay, whatever.
That, as I said, is the DNA. It's the genetic structure of civilization. And we've done everything we can throughout history. Just about every civilization has done everything it can to protect the sanctity of marriage, because they understand not only do you produce the life, but you want to bring the life to the standards and the values that are precious, that are important, that create a civilized environment in which to live.
What's your argument, Mayor, against the logic of that statement? Genetically, DNA, it's man and woman.
Well, why do you give a shit what I do is my answer to that statement. Your rights extend up to where my rights begin and no further. That's what I have to say. I don't care if you like it that I can get gay married or not. It's irrelevant. I couldn't possibly care less if you like it. It's none of your goddamn fucking business. It's my business who I want to marry. That's my answer to that.
DNA. It's man and woman. It's what the marriage and are we being semantic? So call it liberal union, call it gay.
In 1948, Larry, these were the same. There were not dissimilar arguments, not quite analogous, about the fact that races were put on separate continents around the world because God decreed that they shouldn't in any way, shape, or form procreate.
That's true. Absolutely.
The point is, some of these arguments are increasing. I mean, they're just reminiscent. With respect to the pastor, I'm a practicing Catholic. I got married in the church 2+ years. I don't see what we're doing in terms of advancing the bond of love and monogamy and extending that to families of same sex in any way, shape, or form takes away anything from the church or the.
It doesn't. It doesn't take anything away from anybody for others to have their own rights, for others to be allowed to do whatever they want with their lives when it doesn't affect your life in any way. It doesn't affect them. They're just crybabies.
Sanctity of the union that my wife and I have.
I would just like to ask the mayor, as a practicing Catholic, do you believe the Bible is the Word of God?
It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if he's a practicing Catholic or not. We live in a secular government where everybody's allowed to do what they want. My right to swing my fist ends at the tip of your nose. That simple. Dude doesn't seem to get it. It's irrelevant if he's a practicing Catholic.
Yeah, look, Pastor, I'm not going to get in a theological debate with you.
No, that's not a theological debate. That's just a straight question. Do you believe the Bible is the authoritative Word of God?
Yeah, with respect, I guess I do. Now the response.
Well, then the Bible says when God created man, he said one man, one woman.
And one woman, and one woman, and one woman. Oh, yeah. I guess old John MacArthur here forgot about all the wives that King David and King Solomon had and all of the others, right? For every moral supposition you find in the Bible, there is a verse to reverse that position a chapter later. Just about. You can't hold a moral position based on what the Bible says. You can't, because it is so diverse in its opinions on any subject. The guy just doesn't like gay people. I mean, just say it. Just come out and tell us if that's how you feel. Don't try to hide behind the Bible or whatever other nonsense. Just tell us how you feel.
In the New Testament reaffirms that. All the writers of the Old and the New Testament affirm it.
I guess the bottom line is we're living and advancing together across all kinds of differences, Pastor. It is an extraordinary and miraculous thing to come out here in San Francisco. And I think the world looks to us to see that it's possible to live together and advance together.
Yeah, San Francisco is the first place in the United States to allow gay marriage, I think is what it was. I don't really remember exactly, but he allowed people to get gay married in San Francisco for a day, and they made like a ton of money off of it because the cost of the marriage certificate and everything, the state made like a bunch of money by issuing these marriage certificates for people.
Across our differences, and I'm proud to represent a city that has diverse points of view, open points of view, that doesn't believe in discrimination and has evolved from the old constructs that I think have frankly held back society, and many that are inconsistent, yes, with your faith, and I respect the difference of opinion.
Well, I don't respect the difference of opinion. I think it's dumb as dog shit. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the paradox of tolerance. I've mentioned it recently, so I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but the idea behind the paradox of tolerance is this. We have to be intolerant of the intolerant if we want to live in a tolerant society. So think about it this way, to frame it differently. If you want to live in a democracy and maintain a democracy, you have to prevent people who want to tear down the democracy from running for office, because then they're going to, come in and destroy the democracy. If you want to maintain it and protect it, you have to prevent people from getting in who don't want it. And in the same vein, if you want to live in a tolerant society who tolerates everybody, who's accepting of all viewpoints and appreciates all people of all types, then you have to be intolerant of the people who don't want to live among, people of all different types, who think that it's bad to, for a black person to marry a white person or whatever. You can't tolerate that. You can't allow, the paradox of tolerance is not espousing the idea that you should kill them or something. People like this should not be allowed to control government or control regulation or whatever other thing. Paradox of tolerance. Honestly, the paradox of tolerance doesn't espouse what you're supposed to do with people like this. It's just an interesting thing. The way I view it is we all have a social contract, right? My contract with society is I will tolerate you if you will tolerate me. If people don't buy into that contract by being tolerant of my positions, ideals, beliefs, and feelings, then they're exempt from it. Then they're not protected by the ideas. They're not protected by my position on tolerance. They're not protected by the social contract, basically. So, anyway, that's Gavin Newsom. The point is that the dude's been fighting for civil rights since before it was popular. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama did not believe in gay marriage at this time. And Gavin Newsom was on TV arguing in favor of gay rights, of gay marriage. You got to give the dude props for that one, right? I don't understand why anybody doesn't like him. I know that his hair slicked back makes him look like a sleazebag. I get that. He should definitely find a different haircut and smile. But he's actually a really good guy.
It was by phone. I was talking to him on the phone. It's such a weird. He smelled like that was too fast for me.
Sulfur and hair grease.
Yeah. No, but I was making fun of. I shouldn't even make fun of it because it's so tragic. But what's happened to the state and people living on the street?
And what is his non-gaslighty perspective?
He's like, go back to Russia. You like Russia so much. I was like, I'm originally from San Francisco, but...
Actually, I don't believe that. I'm sorry, man. I don't believe a word out of this guy's mouth. You telling me that Gavin Newsom, you were on the phone with him just because you chat with him all the time? Why were you on the phone with Gavin Newsom? And he said to you, go back to Russia? What? Okay.
But, I can't live there because...
He really told you to go back to Russia?
Of course. I mean, he was
I don't believe that for a second.
laughing, whatever. He's a perfectly charming guy. They all are in person. But
of course.
Anyway, I'm so far afield. But my point is, AI is being driven by the greed of politicians to some extent. And you'll notice that AI, by the way, as a fact, those data centers that drive our digital life, which is not life, it's actually death mostly. But
what? That drive our death?
I mean, they're the biggest power draw. I mean, how much electricity does AI require? More than countries?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even think I understand the question. How much electricity does AI require? AI is used by all kinds of people for all kinds of things. And FYI, electricity isn't a bad thing. Electricity's good. We just need to find more efficient, cleaner ways to get it. Like, for example, using nuclear energy. That's a reasonably good method of getting electricity right now until we can build out an entire infrastructure off of more green energy, like off of wind turbines and things like that, until we can improve our battery technology and stuff. Honestly, we have the technology right now necessary to build out an entirely green power grid that is 100% sustainable and renewable. We have the ability to do that right now. It cost us about $6 trillion to do in the United States, which is cheaper than the Iraq War, by the way. And it would cost about $30 trillion to do worldwide. We could do it right now. Why aren't we doing it? And you know what? We pull 16 million barrels of oil out of the ground every day, I think. We could sell those barrels of oil to people instead of using them ourselves, plus an additional 3 million barrels that we have to use to supplement like what we don't pull out of the ground. Why aren't we doing this? Oh my God. Anyway, it's just so stupid. So stupid. Everything about it is stupid. Anyway, let me know what you think about these two guys in the comments. They're the biggest jokes on planet Earth, in my opinion, both of them. Although every now and then you get something that's actually pretty interesting from Joe Rogan. Not often, but every now and then you do. Tell me what you think.